Hi and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to go over what I've learned about the Toothpick class so far since I've been flying it for the last 3 or 4 months or so. I started off with recycling one of these, which is the Crazy Bee board. It's quite a common board that came on quite a lot of cheap models, and it's obviously got ESCs built in, flight controller, and these sockets here for connecting your motors. Now the worst thing about this is pad layout. It's absolutely awful pad layout. It's just got them all over the place on the bottom, nothing on the top. Really hard to solder up, and the pads eventually come off, and this one eventually died. So I think the next one to come out after this was this nameless RC board. They retained being able to put sockets on it. It still uses the same little tiny FETs as the Crazy Bee board. Now the issue with this one is that the FETs are so small that they just pop off. Yeah, the FETs just pop off the back of the board, and yeah, it's alright. I love the fact that the pins are on the top and the bottom, so it's easy to wire, and it flies pretty good, but it comes with some weird firmware on the BL Heli S, so you shouldn't really change the firmware from what's on it, because you can't actually get firmware that runs on it properly. So yeah, I've burnt out a board. I've got one that doesn't fly very well, and I've got a third nameless RC board that is flying good, that I've just left alone. It's not a bad board, and if you're on a budget, I think it's probably the best cheap option. So yeah, you can pick these up on Banggood for like less than £30 maybe. I think I've got a discount code that's active as well, so you can get a bit of a discount on this, so yeah, save yourself a few quid and just go for the cheap one if you're just trying it out. That's what I went for to start with, but since then NJ has been flying the Beta FPV 20 amp version, and it just looked really nice. They look like slightly bigger FETs and a nicer board layout, so I picked one of those up, and my most recent video is me flying with that. I like the fact that you can solder on the plugs still, because these motors had plugs, so I figured I might as well just solder on the sockets for the plugs to go in. And yeah, I've just been I'm really impressed with how this one flies. It's got absolutely no problem with the amount of power that I'm drawing on this setup, so that one's flying really nice. I've had no problems with wiring it up or anything. They're about, I think the 20 amp one is 50 quid, and the 12 amp version is 45 quid in the UK, so it's a little bit more expensive, but it's definitely a much higher quality board. It's a thicker board. The pads are good, and obviously it works really well. So I recommend Beta FPV board, but since building this one, I have been sent this new board to review by Banggood. This is the new GEPRC F4 20 amp. So they've done away with being able to put the sockets, and they've actually just put the solder pads on the edge of the board. So I actually quite like the boards that you solder like that. It's nice and neat and tidy, and obviously it doesn't take as much space up on top of the board, so they've been able to use slightly bigger FETs again from the Beta FPV. They are slightly different. I can't read what they are, but I'm guessing they're slightly better rated, and the layout of it is just really tidy. There's lots of space between everything. They're using some nice big solid state capacitors, I think these brown coloured ones are. So it's got quite a lot of capacitance built into it, but obviously you're going to want to run a capacitor, an external one as well, on your LiPo lead, like they usually come pre-soldered actually when you buy the board. So there's a little capacitor built into that. and you can see I've soldered one onto there as well. So yeah, this is going to be going into a new build, so I'm really looking forward to that. It feels and looks really nice, high quality, so I'll have to update you on how it goes, but yeah, that's the next one I'm trying, so it's probably going to be a good one. Right, moving on from flight controllers, the next thing would be motors. So on my latest video, I've been flying these Beta FPV 1204 5000 kV motors. They're the same as what NJ's been flying, actually, mainly on his. He's got some RC and power ones as well, but they're basically the same. There's no notch at all. They're really, really smooth, so that could either mean they're weaker magnets, bigger air gap, or a combination of the two, really. It's not a bad thing. It could mean that they're really efficient. The number one thing is that they're super smooth, so vibrations on these little quads is quite important to get rid of, and you're not going to have any vibrations really coming from the motors. Certainly nothing that the RPM filter couldn't knock out without any trouble at all. So these are by far the best Toothpick class motors that I've flown to date. So along with the GEPRC board that Banggood sent me, they actually sent me the new motors to try as well. Unfortunately, they only sent me one of them, so I can literally only look at it. But it's probably the nicest quality motor that I've ever seen in this class. So none of the ones I've seen before have got the little wire protection there that stops it going into the bell. Yeah, that's usually only reserved for larger motors. So seeing it on one of these little tiny ones is really nice. And these, like the Beta FPV ones, really, really smooth. There's hardly any, there's a tiny little bit more notch than the Beta FPV one, so it's maybe a tighter air gap, so they might be a little bit more powerful, but they are actually the exact same spec. 1204 5000 kV seems to be a sweet spot for these. And going on how well the Beta FPV ones fly, I know that they're going to be a good choice. I can't stand for the durability or actually how they do fly, because obviously I've only got one, so I had to buy some new motors to go with that GEPRC, and I went for a set of these Zing 1206 4500 kV. So my thinking is that I want to do a 4S rig, and these are gonna work really well for that. I mean, it's one piece bell. I mean, it's really nicely machined. These are, I'd say they feel exactly the same as the big Zing motors. Same sort of little notch to it, but really nice quality, and should have a little bit more power than these 1204s that I've been running, and slightly lower kV, so they'll work a bit better on 4S. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to trying those out. So up until now, I've just been flying with these cameras pretty much, the Runcam Racer Nano, the V1, the silver version. Absolutely brilliant camera this is. For the size of it, it's amazing how good a quality it is, and with the ability to plug in a joystick and change the settings and even use scene selection, I mean, it just makes it's easily the best nano camera on the market, or at least it was, because they've updated it now with the Runcam Nano Racer 2. So I've just picked one of these up. Now they come with a plug, but it's got a joystick as well. Takes full voltage instead of just 5 volts, so you can just run that off the LiPo, which is pretty cool. But you might want to just run it off the 5 volts. So I'm not sure what I'm going to try yet, but I'm really excited to try this camera, because I love the V1. So if they've improved it in the V2, then this will be an amazing camera. So that's going to go in my new build. I wanted to try and find a cheaper option to suggest and recommend to people, so I picked up a Beta FPV edition Cadix EOS 2, and basically, yeah, it's the worst camera I've used in a really long time, probably since the last Cadix camera I tried. Cadix this camera does not work with rapid fire at all. It's obviously not made to very good specifications, and the video that it outputs isn't quite right, and it messes with the rapid fire. So I definitely don't recommend this. Even using legacy mode, the video from it, the colors and it just looked ridiculous. The DVR recording was really bad as well, so yeah, I couldn't really use much of that footage, unfortunately, even though the quad was flying good, and it was flyable. It's okay, but it's £15. You know, for an extra, I know it's double the price, but vision is like the most important thing to have in FPV, so you want to make sure you've got a good camera, so I definitely don't recommend that. But I wanted to, so you know, just stick with what you know. Runcam know how to make cameras. They're easily the best camera manufacturer in the industry, in the FPV industry. So I picked up a Runcam Nano 2 because I really like the form factor of these Nano cameras. So picked up a Runcam Nano 2. I've got one of these in my Tiny Hawk 2, and the quality is awesome. So there's no video settings or anything, but these are only about £15, and the video that you get from them is really nice. They have just released this little bad boy, which is the Nano 3. I mean, it's tiny. Obviously it's just a decased version of this with a lens stuck on it, but you make a nice little TPU mount for that, and yeah, you can save a few grams, which obviously makes a lot of difference with these little tiny micros. So I've seen a little bit of footage on it, and it looks pretty much the same as the Nano 2, to be fair. So and that's cheap as well. I think that was only about £14. So quite looking forward to trying that. Right. Next up is VTX. VTX, you know, I've tried cheap ones, and 9 times out of 10 they don't work. They say they do 200 milliwatts, and then you compare it to a TBS Unify Nano, and the Nano on 50 milliwatt is outperforming this cheap VTX on 200 milliwatts. So basically, I only really recommend just buying a TBS Unify Nano. Either the V1 if you're happy to use a button like I've got on there, because smart audio never works, and they're only about £18. Otherwise, if you get the Pro 32, that goes up to 400 milliwatts and smart audio works on it, but they're closer to £30. So if you're not on a budget, then definitely go for the Pro 32. It's a really, really good VTX. It's exactly the same size, but it does 400 milliwatts. Actually does, not just claiming that it does. And it's super clean video. If you buy a TBS Unify Nano, you can basically, any issues you're having with the quad, you can rule out that, because it's hardly ever going to have an issue with it if you've soldered it up correctly. But they are, you know, I still want to give others a fair game. So I found this one on Unmanned Tech, which, as you can see, is quite a bit bigger than a Unify Nano, but it's still small enough that I can fit underneath a whoop board. So this was £9, and it does 25 or 200 milliwatts, and it has smart audio capabilities. It's also got MMTX, and I've got quite a few MMTX antennas. So yeah, I'm giving that a go in my new build. I mean, if it can do 200 milliwatt and it costs £9, then yeah, it's pretty good. And it's got a microphone as well, so think maybe the DVR will pick that up, but I'm not sure if the DVR on the DJI goggles actually records audio. I don't think it does, so who knows, it's probably useless, but not a bad little VTX for £9. I thought I'd give it a try. Right, in terms of propellers, there's more and more being made. Basically every couple of weeks there's new propellers coming out, which is really good because no matter what motors you use and what, obviously it doesn't matter what camera you use, but whatever motors you use and whatever battery you want to run with it, you'll be able to find a prop that works. If you've got really high kV, you might want to run something smaller like a 2.5 or even one of these little 65mm ones. If you've got the kV like around the 5000 for a 2 or 3S, you can run basically any size prop. I really like these 3-inch HQ tri-blades. So this is 30 by 30 HQ. That's probably my favourite one because it's the most powerful. And I've just got these 30-25s to try by HQ. So yeah, I think they're going to be really good. Obviously, I mean props are not expensive, so just buy a bunch of different props, try it out in your setup, and you're guaranteed to find something that you like to match your ability and your setup, really. So yeah. So when it comes to batteries, I mean, there's a lot. There's more and more coming out all the time. The battery manufacturers have realised that this is a market, and a lot of these have been out for a while. I mean, these little 2S 450 ACs, these have done me well for ages. And if I'm flying indoors, I can fly a little 65mm prop with a 2S, and it's basically like a tiny whoop that a little bit bigger than a big tiny whoop, flies the same sort of power. You get quite long flight times as well, so it's not a bad option for if you're in a tight space or indoors flying or beginner basically. Then you can move on to 3S batteries. So I've only been flying these 350 milliamp hour China Hobby lines that I've had for a while, and yeah, it's for me personally because I fly quite fast, and especially for racing, I'm only getting about 1 minute 30, 1 minute 40 out of those. So I picked up some of these GNB high voltage 450s. That should be just about enough to last a full heat of about 2 minutes, 2 minutes 20 at the most. And if it's not, I have got these 550s as well, so I'm going to be testing those over the next few weeks and seeing how I get on with those. And then of course, if you want to go crazy, you can go up to a 4S. These are actually what I was using on my old 3-inch prototype that I've been flying for ages. These definitely aren't enough of that, but this quad weighs about half the amount of that one, so it's probably going to be enough, more than enough, to carry one of these over. But obviously as you go up in battery size, the weight goes up and becomes less efficient. So it's about trying to find the breaking point, shall we call it, where carrying a bigger LiPo no longer gives you longer flight times because the extra weight is just slowing it down so much that it's killing any performance gain. So it all comes down to what you're building with, what props you're doing, how tidy you do the build. Lots of variables in play, so depending on what you end up with, you can find a battery to suit your setup and flying style as well. I mean, if you're happy for it to fly, if you don't need the ultimate speed and power and efficiency, I mean, and you just want it to fly around for ages really slowly, you could just stick a massive battery on it and it'll fly for 20 minutes. It all depends on what you want to use it for. So that basically covers all the parts so far that I've been messing around with and that I'm going to be playing around with. Now I just want to stop this video and go and put my new build together. So hopefully this video has been helpful and give you a bit of a better idea of what parts you might want to go for, what ones I think are good and what ones I think are bad. So if you have any questions, just chuck them in the comment section below, and look out for the next video. It's going to be a lot more Guitarpick flying to come, I reckon. I'm really enjoying this, so yeah. So stay tuned, guys. Laters.